everyone, it's Leandra from the Lexington facility here at New Vocations program. Please let me know, first and foremost, if you cannot hear me as we're trying to use the microphone, and then sometimes we know that there can be issues, but hopefully it's working and you can hear me well. And today for our meet and greet, we have Regal Image here, who's a 2015 gelding. He's side and we actually have seen him before. He's this sweet personality. He's a big hunk of a guy. And his brother, his half-brother actually, Spanish Treasure, we've seen before too. But his dad was a pretty well-known sire, so he's got a lot of half-brothers. To have him in the program, we've been working through some imbalances in his gait. And so I mentioned it before, it's a pretty new, relatively new tool and kind of unknown that I had talked about before, which is the Pro 6, which is a breathing stick, sort of like we were calling it sort of like a bodysuit, but I'm going to show you how it works, and you guys can kind of get to know Regal and the way that he tool, because by our chiropractor who's also a vet, and the benefits of it are vast in what they're designed to do, and so I'll talk about that a little bit as we're setting it up. But you can use it when the horses are under saddle or lunging. We definitely recommend using it first when you have them on the ground, because it can be a little bit different for them to get used to. Here we have it. Rambo, you can watch this bag for me. Thank you. Had it on a couple other horses. Let me get it sorted out first. But you want to check it out? It has a really strong elastic, and sometimes that sound of the elastic releasing, that sort of ripping sound, you want to make sure they get used to. But what's chiropractor had recommended it is because we have a lot of horses who have imbalanced muscles, just given the nature of racing and that it's one directional primarily. And so we have horses who come with just muscles developed in different ways. They can have gait irregularities. If they are rehabbing from an injury, then they can distribute their weight in ways that are not totally centered. And then even one of the main primary reasons that the people who did design this is that it works on the horse's neuromuscular triggers to reestablish connections that might have been lost. Horses who have had EP or wobblers, sort of neuromuscular diseases or neurologic diseases that can affect the muscular skeleton, this actually can help them to reestablish those pathways, which is really neat. So as I get this all sorted, so I'm going to show you kind of like a brief overview. There's this one big piece, I have it upside down. One big piece that goes from his chest to behind his bum. And again, we're going to make sure he's just used to kind of like the broad picture first. Maybe sort of touch it to him and give him scratches. So this will go in front of his chest. This will go behind his bum. And it actually uses the horse's own movement as like kind of like with elastic band training if you're doing exercises yourself. We're using the horse's own movement to work on strengthening and balancing, and then if they need it, that sort of reprogramming of the body. Okay, so let's try this. So let's just make sure, again, elastic sounds can be scary. Oh, he's got a great personality for this because he's curious, and even when he has sort of like a startle reflex, that's very normal for the horses. They're, after all, flight animals, so we can expect that. So this logo here for Pro 6, we'll have that go. This is going to go over his head, and a lot of times the horses are used to having like blankets and coolers and everything. So this, generally for off-the-track thoroughbreds, like that might be a scary step for other horses, but a lot of times these guys are used to it. So we'll put this over his head. And one of the things when you're adjusting With this, when we're adjusting their bum, I like to put it on like a loose setting or even have it hanging. We can tighten that later. But if they're going to have a reaction to something, generally it tends to be that being the pressure behind their bum. And that we do the same thing with our lunging stir singles. That we often, like I have attached on many of them just ace bandages that attach to the rings. So a lunging star single would go behind, like at their heart girth here, and you'd attach the ace bandage to the rings to go behind their bum to the other side. Again, that's sort of working that same natural tension to help them collect and just be more mindful of like where their legs are and engaging those muscles, and hopefully to engage the abdomen and some of the harder to train muscles. So some of ours are used to that already in just like a basic concept, but I'll just make sure he's really comfortable with me being back here. Again, the elastic, and they have different sizes, horse size. And so it's really helpful to have a buddy for this, because if he does buck or something, we're going to let him sort of just out. So I'll just try not to have any loose straps, and like we can adjust later. Try to put it down on something for the meantime. Not that one. Here we go. So I'm just going to slide it over his back. Adjusted well still. So far so good. But once they start moving, it's like, oh geez, so good. Hi. Like, I'm gonna snap. And then we can adjust this. So I'm going to come back around and we can really briefly go over this. It does come with a really good set of instructions. So if somebody did want to get this, you'd have more of a guide in that. But this piece, ideally, they're all built a little differently, but ideally this piece is going to be lined up sort of in a way that it can be perpendicular and cross right over there at the shoulder. Same here. Yeah, you can attach the same thing on that side. Second. Oops. Hopefully we can keep it running smoothly. And then this piece is again perpendicular, but you want it sort of like right at where the haunch starts here. So our last piece is going to be, which engages the abdomen. Yep. Okay. I'm gonna so that it's see if we can get it lined up straight. Okay, and then I'm gonna give this to you. We're going to leave it up to Julie. All right, so you have perpendicular lines right at the sort of at the beginning of right in the middle of their shoulder, really, I guess, but sort of like imagine sort of like the top point of the withers there. So you have the perpendicular at the shoulder, perpendicular at the beginning of the haunch, and then you kind of have the belly band portion of it. And the back is pretty loose still. I want him to get used to this. And Regal's already lunged before, so the lunging part, definitely, if they don't know how to do that, they should be able to before you do this, if you're going to be working with them. And most of the horses who have come from our facilities have already lunged, so to start. And groundwork is really great in a lot of different ways, just to establish your relationship with the horse, to get to know their movement, the quirks, likes and dislikes, all of that good stuff. Sorting things out on the ground is a really good thing. Maybe save your body for long term too. So Julie's just kind of seeing what he thinks about it. there haven't been any fireworks and, bucking or anything that would be oppositional to the band itself. So something that we've noticed with Regal has been in his hind end movements having some irregularities. But mostly what we've seen is on the right side. He did get adjusted by the chiropractor, so that's something that we've already addressed. That can be a good place to start if you see imbalances in their hips. But what we've saw with him is not so much in his pelvic alignment. You can see at the point of hip and at the very top of their bum, at the two sort of points at the top there, at the ilium, the SI area, the sacroiliac area. So we've noticed that those, you could watch him jog from behind and his hips would be moving in a balanced fashion, but he just still seemed a little bit short. So again, we are going back to this sort of movement because it works on the muscular aspects more. And what's great with something like this, even if it's not this tool specifically, but say you're just lunging and use the ACE bandage, is that when you work on the muscular side of things, it can help them really to hold things like a chiropractic adjustment. So say that their muscles are imbalanced, you get them adjusted by the chiropractor, which is usually $100 and some. And if the muscles can't support that, then your money's kind of out the window. They're likely to have the same misalignment in their skeletal structure. So muscles are super, super important. Oftentimes, you can imagine there are a lot of muscle sort of pains, whether you have like a knot or you strained a muscle in a workout or something. We feel those things. They're super athletes. You still have to mind you have to mind the muscle side as well as the skeleton. They can have bad days and feel kind of crummy in just their muscles or have those imbalances, and that's going to play a big role into their athletic endeavors, just like with any person, athlete or otherwise, but certainly becomes more important the more you ask him to do. It's gonna take a poop break. Muscle imbalances, yes, very common, if that's what you're talking about. We see a lot of imbalances. It just becomes kind of to what degree. And you can see, I always like to sort of point out when horses are acting in a fashion that's different than, not just any horses, but when our horses are acting differently than that stereotype about off-the-track thoroughbreds. You have Regal here who's I think I'd rather walk, and we're trying to do a workout with him. So Julie's using the lunge whip as just a driver to encourage him to move forward. Obviously, he's clearly not scared of it, but it's just, if she had 10-foot long arms, we could use the same sort of thing, but it just should be an extension of your arm. But anyway, you have this stereotype of horses, off-the-track thoroughbreds, being very hot, and here Regal is disproving that as a generalized theory. But I don't know how clear it is, but you can really see that he's working harder to push that right one forward, which is great because that's what the exercise is. The right side especially, our vet kind of calls it the outside tire. So if you were driving a race car in a circle, you would see a lot of wear on that outside tire. Obviously, there would be different kinds of wear, but there's a lot of torque on that outside leg. So especially issues with we see a lot of right front sesamoid fractures or right front suspensory injuries, but you do have to be mindful of in the retraining process that primarily it's a left-sided movement since they race to the left. So something like this and working in a balanced way is going to really, really help them in the long run. And when we talk about even a horse's projection for what they'll be able to do in their future as far as athletic endeavors, we tend to put our recommendations on the conservative side because we really just can't always predict what people are going to do. But I always like to remind people that what the horse is going to be able to do depends so much on the fitness and maintenance that you are going to provide for this horse. So at the top level of competition, horses are say you have a Grand Prix show jumpers who are competing at Olympic level events. When they are done competing, they get their eggs iced, poulticed, wrapped. They get the acupuncture, chiropractic, magnetic blankets, like you name it, they're getting a high level of maintenance. If they have issues, they're rested, they might get them injected to help to alleviate the inflammation. Like there's a whole slew of maintenance that goes behind it. And in addition to that, just the fitness routines those horses have to go through, like even with the jumpers, you have, 4 or 5 days of really like working flat work, not just jumping. So again, like fitness and maintenance is going to matter so much, but this is a huge part of it, is working in a balanced way. So Regal Image here, he had several years ago he broke his ilium, and he's recovered from that and does just fine. Even with a substantial joint like that, you can see this great improvement and this great balance of use. But then he fractured his left front sesamoid actually in work and retired at that point, and that's healed and he's doing great from that. But when you're considering muscle development too, something we see is that contralateral imbalance. So horses can't really kick up their feet on the sofa and rest their legs. So if say he's having just in his past injury, so if he's left front, then he's having that inflammation, so to rock back his limbs, so the right cell contralateral leg. We don't think that, given he's been looked at by the vet and the chiropractor, this is muscle imbalance, and that can happen for time. And if they're just working in a field, he was out chiropractically and then just was turned out. It's kind of like having a crook in your neck that doesn't ever get sort of set back. So this could be part of it. It could be just because he has more muscle developed on the other side, but working them in a way that is balanced and centered and is going to help them move forward in a better or sort of collected and even way, it's going to help them no matter what. So that's what we're doing with Regal Image here currently. We're really excited to be able to offer him up for adoption at some point, but we're still just working with him through this. So far so good, but also Pro 6 is a really great tool that was recommended to us that we're trying out here, and we've noticed really good results so far. If I hadn't before either, and now we're pretty big fans of it. So Regal Image here, if you missed the first part, he's a 2015 gelding. He's really goofy and has a big personality, and we think he'll be able to have a really good breadth for athletic endeavors down the road, but obviously this is a big part of bringing him back up into fitness. So thank you so much for joining us. This is just a little bit of behind the scenes to one of our fine trainees, Regal Image here, and showing you a little, since we've had a lot of traction in our adoptions, and what that means is we're having horses adopted faster right now than they're coming in, and so a bit of this lull where we're trying our program for ones like Regal Image here who need the kind of extra step before they're put up online as adoptable. So in the meantime, we'll keep trying to show you some of the things that we're doing in trying to get these horses ready so that you guys have a good understanding of what's happening. So thank you again for joining us. Please join us again on Monday. We take a break on Sundays from these meet and greets, but tune back in Monday at noon Eastern time. We'll have more adoptable or soon to be adoptable or behind the scenes kind of horses to show you. And again, thanks for being here. Hope you have a great weekend.